Hello, everybody. All right, so today we're going to be looking at a type of question that you may get on your ability test. And I'm going to call this question a handshake problem. And you'll soon see why I call it that. So here is an example. Now, you won't be getting a question as easy as this, but I made the question very easy so that we can see what the pattern is and what we need to do. So the question says, 3 people meet and shake hands with each other. How many handshakes are there? Now, usually this question will not use 3 people, the number will be far more than 3. But let us say we have 3. So let us say we have Amy, we have Bob and Carl meet each other and they're going to shake hands. And they want to know how many handshakes are we going to get. So let us start by thinking about Amy. When Amy comes, Amy is going to have a handshake. It's going to be a handshake with Amy and Bob, right? Amy is going to shake hands with Bob. And Amy is also going to shake hands with Carl. Shake here and one handshake here. Amy shaking with Bob and Amy shaking hands with Carl. So in total, Amy will shake hands twice, right? Let us think about Bob. How many times will Bob shake hands? So Bob is going to shake hands. Bob is going to shake hands with Amy, and Bob is also going to shake hands with Carl. So Bob is going to shake hands with Carl. But let us look at this. When we shake, and he will have a total of 2 handshakes. But let us look at this handshake. Bob shaking hands with Amy, and Amy shaking hands with Bob. This is this is not 2 separate handshakes. When Amy is shaking hands with Bob, Bob is shaking hands with Amy. And we have already counted that handshake up here. So let us not count it again. So where we have Amy has 2 handshakes, Bob does shake hands twice, but we already counted one of them up here. So we are going to count him as only shaking 1 new handshake. All right, let us look at Carl. Whose hand would Carl shake? Carl and Amy would shake hands, and we would have Carl and Bob shaking hands. Look over here. We have Carl and Amy shaking hands. When Amy shook Carl's hand, Carl was shaking Amy's hand. So this shaking of hands, and this shaking of hands is the same, and we have already counted it here. So we're not going to count it again. But let us look closer. When Carl and Bob, the handshake for Carl and Bob, look up here with Bob. Bob was shaking Carl. So we know that this handshake and this handshake is the same. And we already counted it up here. So we're not going to count it again. So how many new handshakes do we have for Carl? We have 0. So what is the total amount of handshakes we have? 2 plus 1 is 3. So the total handshakes for when 3 people meet will be 3 handshakes. Okay, so here's another question. Let us look at this question. Instead of 3 people, we are now having 4 people. So let us use Amy again. Amy, Bob, Carl, and Don. Okay? So let us do the same thing again. Who is Amy going to shake hands? This time I'm just going to use the initials. Amy is going to shake with Bob. That's 1 handshake. Then Amy is going to shake with Carl. That's another handshake. Amy is going to shake with Don. In total, how many handshakes are there? 3 handshakes. There we count them 1, 2, 3. Let us look at Bob. Who is Bob going to shake hands with? Bob is going to shake hands with Amy. Bob and Amy. Bob is also going to shake hands with Carl, Bob and Carl, and Bob is also going to shake hands with Don. But let us look carefully. Bob and Amy, look at this handshake. It is the same handshake as Amy and Bob. When Amy is shaking Bob's hand, Bob is shaking Amy's hand. So we already counted it up here in this 3. So we're not going to count it again. So we'll cross that one out. So how many new handshakes do we have? We have 2 new handshakes. All right, let's do the same thing for Carl. Whose hand is Carl going to shake? We're going to have Carl and Amy. Carl is going to shake Amy's hand. Carl is going to shake Bob's hand, Carl is going to shake Bob's hand, and Carl is going to shake Don's hand. Again, everybody has 3 handshakes. But let's take a look. Carl and Amy is the same handshake as when Amy was shaking with Carl. So we are not going to count that handshake. We're not going to count that handshake another time, right? But let's look again. Carl and Bob. Do we have when Bob shake Carl's hand? There it is. Carl shaking Bob's hand is the same thing as Bob shaking Carl's hand. So we're not going to count this one again because we already counted it over here. So what do we have? Carl shaking Don's hand. So we have one new handshake. Let us look at Don. Whose hands are Don going to shake? Don is going to shake Don and Amy. Don is going to shake Amy's hand. Don is going to shake Bob's hand. And Don is going to shake Carl's hand. Again, he is going to have a handshake 3 times. But let us look. Don shaking Amy's hand. We already counted that one, so we're not going to count it again. Don shaking Bob's hand. Here it is. Don shaking Bob's hand. We are not going to count that one again. And look here. Don shaking Carl's hand. Don shaking Carl's hand. We're not going to count that again. So in other words, we're not going to add any new handshakes because we've counted them all already. So when we add up the handshakes, 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 1 is 6. So we have a total of 6 handshakes. All right? So if 4 people meet in a room, and everybody shook, there'll be a total of 6 handshakes. I want you to notice something. Do you notice something right here? Are you noticing something? Okay, very good. Let's compare the answers that we got when 4 people were shaking hands. Let us compare it to when we had only 3 people. Take a look at the pattern that we have here. Take a look at this pattern. And then, do you have it in your head? Now let's take a look at the other pattern when we had 3 people. Okay, and this is when we had 3 people. Look at the pattern. Do you notice something? Very good. You notice that we are starting and we are counting down. You notice? 2, 1, 0. And the last person is ending with 0. Let us go back and look at the one with 4 people. And here we are starting here, counting down 3, 2, 1, 0. So what we notice in the pattern is that the pattern always starts 1 less than the amount of people that you have. We have 4. The number of handshakes here starts at 3. And we also notice that the last person, the number of unique or new handshakes is always 0. And then we just add them up. All right? So I'm going to give you that hint, and then I'm going to ask you now to try this one on your own. Let us look at this one. 6 business people meet for lunch and shake hands with each other. How many handshakes are there? So what I want you to do is pause the video now, see if you can set this one up, and come back and check if you got it right. I'm going to go through it with you. So pause the video and do this question now. Okay, so I'm sure you got this question right. So let us set it out the way I showed you. We have person number 1, person number 2, person number 3, person number 4, person number 5, and person number 6. How many handshakes is person number 1 going to have? They're going to shake hands with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other people. So they're going to have 5 handshakes. How many new handshakes is person 2 going to have? They're going to shake hands 5 times as well. But we already counted 1 in person number 1's handshake. So it's going to be 4 new handshakes. And we just continue the pattern. 3, 2, 1. And we always know that the last person, there'll be no new handshakes. So all we have to do now is add these up. 5 plus 4 is 9. 9 plus 3, 12. 12 plus 2, 14. 14 plus 1 is 15. So that's a total of 15 handshakes. Okay, so let's look at this other question. This question is not about handshakes, but it's the same type of question. And if you think about it, it is a question that we can work out in the same way. So it says 8 teams entered a netball tournament. Each team has to play every other team once in the first round. How many games are there in the first round? This question, the way you will approach it is exactly the same way we would do the ones with handshakes. But I'm going to let you try on your own. Pause the video, work on it, and come back to see if you got it right. Okay, so now you've tried this on your own. Let us go. We're going to set it up in the same way. So we have team number one, number two, number three, number four, number five, number six, number 8. How many games is team number 1 going to be playing? They are going to play team number 2, team number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So they are going to be playing 7 games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Team number 2 will play 7 games, but we already counted 1, so there's going to be 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the last team will be playing same 7 games, but there'll be no new games. All right. Now we just have to add these up to find out how many games will be in the first round. I like to make my life easier, so I just look at this and I say 7 plus 3 is 10. 6 plus 4 is another 10, so that would be 20, 25, 27, and 1 is 28. So there'll be 28 games in the first round. I'm glad that you got that right. Okay, let's look at one more question. Okay, I'm not going to say anything about this question. I want you to try it on your own. It's not about handshake and it's not about teams, but it's the same. We would approach this question in the same way. Take a look and try this one for yourself. All right, so I know you got this one right as well. Let us go. So Bob wants to choose 2 different numbers from the set 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And he wants to add them together. How many different answers can he get in this way? All right, so let's take a look. He can choose 1, he can choose 2, he can choose 3, 4, and 5. All right, now let us see how many ways how many other different numbers he can add to number 1. He can add 1 and 2, he can add 1 and 3, he can add 1 and 4, and he can add 1 and 5. Okay? Because they have to be different numbers, he's not adding 1 and 1. So how many different numbers can he add together? He can add 4 different numbers. 1 plus 2, 1 plus 3, 1 plus 4, and 1 plus 5. Let us look at 2. It is the same thing like the handshaking. 2 can add 2 plus 1. But we already counted that, so we're not going to count it again because 1 plus 2 is the same thing as 2 plus 1. So we're going to move on. So there'll be 3 different answers that he can get here. This will be 2, this will be 1, and this one will be 0. See the pattern, okay? Let us add. 4 plus 3 is 7, 7 plus 2 is 9, and 1 is 10. So there'll be 10 different answers that he could get. All right, I just want to talk about this for a second. This is an easy way to do this if the numbers are small, numbers up to 10 maybe. I don't believe that you will get a number higher than 10, but if you do, and for those of you who like to run formulas, there's a formula that you can use. I don't want you to go around memorizing formulas. I really want you to understand what you're doing. So I prefer if you do it the way that I showed you. But if you find this way easier, or if you have been given a number that's really large, like 45 or 50, number that it would make sense to go down and count, this is the way you're going to do it. So the formula is n multiplied by n minus 1, and we divide it by 2. And n is the number of teams, the number of teams that you have, the number of people, whatever the amount of teams, people, numbers to select from. That's what we use n to be. So let us look in this example. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it is going, the formula would be 5 times 5 minus 1, all divided by 2. 5 minus 1 is 4, so 5 times 4, all divided by 2, 5 divided, which is equal to 5 fours are 20. 20 divided by 2 is equal to 10. So this is another way. I'm just showing you to let you know if your teacher has taught it you using a formula, it's the same thing we're doing. But the other way that I showed you will really explain it for you to understand it. All right? I hope everybody understands. If you don't, then we can talk about it in class. Bye, everybody.